part of our circle of life.
No, it's the circle of torture and death.
We've been misinformed. We are not omnivores. You are eating death. You're killing yourself. Plants can do much more for us than we even realize right now. We've got to save ourselves, but that we can save ourselves.
Today, I've got a very special guest, Dr. Milton Mills.
All of the data shows that if we don't eat other animals, we are healthier. We, from top to bottom, inside out, are plant eaters.
Hey, it's Joe Best here, and welcome to another interview of plant-based doctors on Plant-Based News. And today, I've got a very special guest, Dr. Milton Mills. And what's unique about him is he went plant-based first at the age of 16. And then he said, you know what? No one's going to believe me how incredible this lifestyle is unless I became a doctor. And that's what he did. And he actually ended up at Stanford. And then he took that credibility and that motivation, and he went into primary care and he started saving people's lives. And he has many testimonials about how he's helped people. And not only that, his mission is to disseminate this information in the most easily digestible format that you can find. So he has many lectures on YouTube and on his website. The Biology of Disgust, which is the great title, Why We're Not Designed to Eat Meat, Flowers and the Human Intellect, just really bringing in all of the levels in which we can see why an animal-based diet is not for humans. And I'm just so impressed with this man's work, and I can't wait for his book to come out, Diet by Design. That's going to be exciting. So with that said, welcome to the conversation, Dr. Milton Mills.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a real privilege to be here with you.
Well, I had a real nice time researching you because I don't think I've come across someone that's got so many lectures. It's like a university degree. There's just so much content, and I think this is what really highlights your story, is this raw passion.
The sort of the holy grail of my life, that what I am really, and what I've been working towards doing, is a book that will explain in as great a detail as I can conceptualize how and why human beings are herbivores. That's been really the underlying and driving force. Now, writing a book is it's an easy thing to think, but it's not so much an easy thing to do. And so what I have done is I've taken the information that I've accumulated from the research, and I've tried to make it available through these lectures that I do. And so it all comes out of this goal of writing this definitive tome, if you will, that will convince people we are definitely not carnivores, that we, from top to bottom, inside out, are plant eaters. That's why we carve animals up into these rounded hand-sized objects, so that subconsciously they will mimic plants, and then we cover them with plants to make them taste like plants. That's really what our brain wants and recognizes as a health signal, if you will. It is astounding. We are, as I said, inside out, top to bottom, true herbivores.
Yeah, it's absolutely clear. I mean, I've been vegan for 10 years, and even watching your lectures, you get new takes on it. And a couple of things that I really liked was it's so obvious. It's you didn't say it in this way, but I'll just paraphrase it. If you took humans into the savannah and you gave them 200 pounds of meat, they wouldn't know what to do with it. They might eat a little bit, and then it's just going to rot.
And they'll kill themselves. Yes, exactly. If they try to eat it, absolutely. Whereas the carnivores can eat from it until there's not a morsel left, and they'll be fine because they have the physiologic equipment to deal with that.
And the giant stomachs,
and the acidity in the immune system to literally handle all the pathogens they were encountering.
I mean, we can eat meat, but we're not designed to. There was a TV show I saw, but a documentary, and it was about these Maasai warriors and how they started eating meat, and they would literally, 4 of them would line up, and they would all walk together towards a lion eating a meal. and then they would cut off a leg and run away. Because the lion would back away at first, but then it's like, hang on, these are just small people. So they had about a minute to cut something and run off. And I'm like, you have to be so hungry to go and do that.
Just that scene that you described to me, if you were to calculate the amount of energy that was expended between those four individuals vis-a-vis the amount of the number of calories that they actually received from that leg that they stole, it wouldn't balance.
No.
They would have expended way more energy than they could extract as individuals from that leg. And that is not a recipe for success in the evolutionary scheme of things. You keep expending more energy than you can extract from the food you receive, and you die. But because we as humans have attached certain cultural values to certain behaviors, we do a lot of things that don't make sense in an evolutionary sense, but they are just part of who we are in the cultures that we've evolved. And then people will say, well, but it was high quality protein. No, it's not. Animal protein turns on cancer genes and genes that cause metabolic diseases. So the fact is that that between the four of them and whoever else they shared that leg with, they got a little bit of meat and maybe felt like, we're big warriors because we, I was just lying. But it did not profit them from an energetic standpoint, nor from a nutritional standpoint, because again, they didn't get enough to really make a difference in their nutrition. And the majority of their calories were still coming from the plant foods.
What astounded me about this was that, first of all, you're right. I think it was part of a coming of age that they do this. And the amount of time they'd have to spend walking about to come across that, compared to, I mean, I don't want to idealize it, but compared to being a primate that finds a tree that's ripe, I live in Thailand. I see mango trees that they can stay ripe for a month, 2 months, and they just keep dropping down. You don't even have to climb up. They just keep dropping down hand-sized packets of nutrition. So it's just so super obvious, and we've got pretty confused about this.
But actually, what's even more beautiful is that, so you were talking about primates in general. Well, what distinguishes human beings from other primates? It's our feet. The fact that we don't have hands for feet, we have feet. And the human foot is one of the most, perhaps the most efficient walking mechanism amongst mammals that ever came into being. So what does that tell us? It tells us that humans and human ancestors adapted to roaming the savannah looking for other cat foods. And so we don't have to hang out in the trees waiting for them to drop their fruit. We go out and we find the grains. There's a wonderful paper written, I think it's Clifford Jolly, called The Seed Eaters, where he talks about what really characterized the bulk of the diets of hominids was their ability and adaptation for eating seeds, and which are like grains, legumes, and so forth. There's another paper that came out that talked about the importance of root vegetables and underground storage organs of plants to human societies and development. So the thing is that we adapted to using a much broader range of plant foods that were in total actually more nutritious than either fruit or animal tissue because of all of the phytochemicals, antioxidants, fiber, and so forth that these foods contained. And that's what made us so successful. And that's another thing that is characteristic of human societies, is that we are peripatetic. We like to roam around and exploit different environments. Let me ask you, did you have a chance to look at my lecture called Flowers in the Human Intellect?
Yeah.
What is really key for me from that lecture was what flowers mean to humans and what they and how they move us emotionally. The provenance of that article was I had a dog, a lab named Onyx, and I was walking her one day, and we came across some wild irises. And the irises happen to be one of my favorite flowers. And And I was standing there kind of having my little emotional moment, because they were just so beautiful. And she walked up to them, sniffed them, and peed on them. And it made me laugh to think about the difference in our emotional response to this. And I'm like, here I am literally having an emotional moment. And to her, it's just something to use as a marker. And so that's what started me thinking, well, why should we love flowers? What is that connection, that relationship telling us? What does beauty mean on an evolutionary scale? Why does beauty and is the concept of beauty exist? Well, one, it drives our behavior. It makes us gravitate towards things that we find beautiful and interact with them in whatever ways that are appropriate. And, it's easy to look at the concept of physical beauty amongst humans. And it's very easy and very clear to make the correlation that the things that we find beautiful in other human beings are things that correlate with physical fitness, reproductive fitness, and the ability to survive and pass on our genes. So then why would we find flowers beautiful?
Right.
Well, because flowers are precursors of food if you're an herbivore. And if you can recognize that when you see a flower and you come back, maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, there's likely to be something to eat, then clearly those hominids who were able to make that connection at a subconscious basis would be more apt to survive and pass on their genes than people who peed on them like my dog.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting, that lecture, because for me, I had a similar realization when I was in the US and I was traveling about. And this was before I was vegan. And I'm driving along the freeway and I thought to myself, wow, these golden arches, these signposts, they're telling my brain this is a fruit tree. And I know what to expect in there. So I pull in and I get a hand-sized, colorful object. I thought, they've just replicated what it must be like to be, walking as a traveler or nomad. And you see a ripe tree and the expert knows that's going to be mangoes. They're going to taste like this.
Absolutely. Yes. And that's why we are drawn to colors. And omnivores and carnivores are typically colorblind because color doesn't impact the quality of the food that they eat necessarily. So it's, like I said, it's really amazing. And then the whole issue of scent, the smells that we are attracted to. And in the lecture on flowers, I make the connection between the chemical compounds that give flowers and fruits their aroma, their odor, are compounds that when we ingest them actually make us disease resistant, healthier, turn on genes that correlate with health and longevity. And so there's a reason we like to smell like plants. People know that if you have a dog and it goes out and finds something rotten, it'll roll in it and come home. Well, in a sense, they're doing the same thing we do when we spray on Calvin Klein. Because when we spray ourselves with plant scents, we're telling other humans, we know where the good food is, okay, on the subconscious level. When a dog rolls in a dead carcass, it's telling his pet mates, hey, I found some food. Let's go eat.
Right.
It is like when you see the big picture, it is just phenomenal.
So just to throw in a counter argument that I sometimes hear, they say that, yeah, I understand with fruits and vegetables, but the plants that you have to cook to eat, how is that any more natural than cooking meat to preserve it?
So who says you have to cook them neither? That is a lovely natural experiment. Is I would say to someone, take commonly eaten food items, your choice, sit them on your counter for 4 or 5 days, and come back and see which ones you can eat. And the plant foods you'll always be able to eat, not the dead flesh. You won't be able to ingest it. And so cooking plants it's a behavior, it's a habit, but it's not strictly necessary. And even when we think about things that we like beans, people say, well, how can you eat beans? Well, first of all, beans, when they are taken straight off the plant, are edible. They're soft. They're you can chew them.
Are they? I never knew that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. And also, I was just thinking they sprout.
Think about peas. Think about fresh peas versus the dried peas that you get that you make split pea soup with. Yeah. So we dry them as a way of preserving them, but when they're fresh, they're edible. But even then, if you take like pinto beans or black beans that have been dried, all you have to do is sprout them. They don't have to be cooked.
And one other thing I thought myself, even though I'm vegan, was like, if I came across beans in the wild, how long would it take me to gather up enough for a meal? But now what I think is it would be less than going to find a lion eating a gazelle.
Absolutely. Because plants grow and mature and ripen, as a group. And yes, you would spend much less time and many fewer hours gathering the plant foods than you would trying to chase something down and kill it and then drag it back to wherever your living arrangements were. And in fact, again, that is one of the arguments that I will make, is that because we learned to exploit these high energy plant foods that were easily accessible and didn't require us risking injury and death to get them, that's what freed up our minds to invent things like balloons and airplanes and and all of the other things that go into modern society.
So moving to a slightly different topic here, let's talk about the optics in modern day society. So I've been vegan for 10 years. I have lost a lot of weight. I've lost about 70 pounds. I haven't got down to my ideal weight. I'm still like 40 pounds over. My diabetes have really improved. It hasn't completely gone away, but I'm in like below 6 for my HbA1c. You can put a carnivore next to me who looks ripped, lean, they look healthy, and they're completely convinced that what they're doing is much more healthy than what I'm doing. What do you say about that?
What I say about that is that they are burning up their future. Because they may look good when you look at them from the outside, but when you actually look at what's going on physiologically, there's a ton of research now that show that these carnivore diets, keto diets, low carb diets, however you want to frame the concept, that they shorten your life. They raise the risk for all sorts of chronic diseases, and it is very clear that these diets do not correlate with longevity, that these people have much higher risk of chronic disease, heart disease, and so forth. And, my glib response when someone says, well, I went keto and I lost all this weight, I'm like, if weight loss is your goal, just start smoking meth. That will help you lose pounds like nobody's business. But we also know that's not healthy. And the same thing is true with these keto diets, that, yeah, they can help you get lean. But when you look at what happens long term, these people die quickly. And they end up with all these chronic diseases. So you can't just look at someone at one point in time. You've got to look at the entire trajectory of their life and their overall disease risk. And it is absolutely clear that those diets do not correlate with a long and healthy life.
How do you know it's not the accompaniment of processed food that makes meat a problem?
Well, actually, the people who are keto have, in a sense, answered that question, because they try to eliminate all processed carbs. And they try to stick to a high-fat, animal protein-based diet. So one, we can tell from looking at, again, people who eliminate the processed carbs and just do the animal foods, that, again, it correlates with disease. But you can also look at it from a scientific standpoint. And what I mean by that is, look at what happens in the human body when we ingest animal protein. So in one of my lectures, I show people a picture. I show them an adult elephant, a rhino, and I think there's a cow. And I ask the question, what is the natural diet for these animals? And everybody says plants. I'm like, okay, at what point in their life do they eat animal protein? Consistently, about 80% of the audience will say never. But then there's 20% that'll say, when they're babies, when they're nursing. And that is the truth. But what that means is that when a plant eater's body sees animal protein, it interprets it as a growth signal. Right. And it turns on these growth genes that in adult animals become cancer genes. Because as an adult, our cells are supposed to be in a steady state and quiescent. When they start getting hit by signals that are telling them to grow, they will start trying to grow, and they'll form things like lipomas, cysts, moles, but they also form tumors and cancer. And they also stimulate the liver to crank out a hormone called insulin-like growth factor, which is a growth promoting hormone.
This makes so much sense. That's so clear. I heard you say that if you keep bringing building materials to a completed house, you end up with piles of rubble, and you said biological rubble is a tumor.
It is. Exact. Oh, Joe, I love you because yeah, those analogies I think really resonate with people because it can make sense, and it's the idea that if you go to a vacant lot and you want to build a building, you hire contractors to deliver building materials, but once the building is built, if they keep delivering those materials, you end up with a pile of rubble. And biologically, a pile of rubble is a tumor.
Yeah, it's amazing. So it's very clear, the presentations that you make, and there's also the reality of people trying to do this. And I know that you said you come from, Oakland, like an underserved part of Oakland. What is your thoughts around this healthcare food industry and kind of racial bias and the challenges that you face coming from that type of community to get this food in your body, which is the goal, right?
When you look at our nation's inner city underserved areas, one of the things that is characteristic of those neighborhoods is that they are filled with fast food franchises. And that's because the government subsidizes this unhealthy, toxin-laden stuff and makes it easy for people to operate, within certain environments. And the flip side is that the people who are living there, I mean, they need, they don't have a lot of resources. And so they look for something that's accessible and affordable. And unfortunately, that frequently ends up being fast foods. And the fact that this food is so heavily subsidized and made actually targeted to these poorer neighborhoods, it absolutely exacerbates these endemic health issues that we see in communities of color and so forth. And that is something we absolutely need as a nation to look at and address. And that's also, again, one of the reasons I have such a passion for this is so that I can help people understand that the government is not coming to save us. We've got to save ourselves, but that we can save ourselves by changing what we eat, and that the power and keys to health are, to a large extent, in our own hands. And so, again, the fundamental key there is education. I want to tell you about a patient that I had a year ago. He's I think, 48-year-old Hispanic gentleman who came to see me in the clinic where I was working. And he said he was concerned that he might be developing diabetes because he had a family history of it. And he was noticing that he was urinating a lot. He was thirsty all the time. And so he wanted to be checked out. So we did his labs and he came back to review them with me. And our fasting blood sugar should be about 85 to 90. His was 263. His hemoglobin A1C was 9.8. It should be 4.8 to 5.4. Cholesterol values were completely through the roof. And he naively looked at me, innocently, I should say, looked at me and said, "So does that mean I have diabetes?" And I said, "Yes, not only do you have it, but it's wildly out of control. And if we don't do something to bring it under control, it's going to start to damage your organs." And so he's like, "Well, what do we do?" I said, "Well, most practitioners would tell you, immediately put you on medication." I said, "But I'm going to tell you that, in my opinion, type 2 diabetes is a choice. Because if we modify our diet enough, we can put that disease into remission. I said, so which one do you want? Do you want me to start you on meds or do you want to try and use diet? And he said, well, I want to use diet. And I said, well, you have to understand, you've got to become whole food, plant-based, low-fat vegan. And he said, I'm willing to try that. Assigned him homework, videos, one of my lectures on diet. The expression I use is, I got to keep you on a short leash. And I need to see you at least once a month. Joe, he came back and in a month's time, fasting blood sugar was 96, which is in the normal range. His A1C had dropped from 9.8 to 7.6. Cholesterol values were coming down. Everything was completely normal. I told him, I said, I'm so proud of you because you have demonstrated the power of lifestyle change and the appropriate diet. And I told him, I said, we don't have a medication on the books that can do what your diet has done for you. And he himself was just, I mean, he's bouncing off the walls. He's talking to me about all these new recipes he's trying and how he's recruiting family members and friends to adopt a vegan lifestyle because he felt so much better. And is, he had more energy. He had lost, I think, 16 pounds without even trying. And so there is no question.
Yeah, so very interesting. So the food industry, as we just discussed, they've targeted the lower income brackets. But I've noticed, being a vegan, that they're targeting the higher income brackets, because I've been eating a whole foods plant-based for a while. And I went to London a few years ago, and I got dragged back into, somewhat willingly, unfortunately, plant-based burgers, plant-based cheese, pizzas, like all the food that I'd got away from that just wasn't available vegan. Now it is. So what do you think about these plant-based meats and the way that they're coming for the people, the other end as well?
The evil people have shown up. and they want to create an unhealthy facsimile of veganism that is centered around the same types of foods that people have learned to eat. So that being said, Stanford actually did a 8-week crossover study looking at Beyond Burgers versus beef burgers. And so they had 2 groups in the study. For the first 4 weeks, one group ate the Beyond Burger, the other group ate traditional beef, and then they crossed over at the 4-week point. And what they showed consistently was that when people were on the plant-based burger, bad cholesterol, LDL, dropped, their blood pressure dropped, they lost weight, and the amount of a very toxic compound called trimethylamine oxide, a TMAO, dropped. As soon as they went back to eat meat, those things reversed. Let's just say the plant versions of these traditional foods are healthier, but they are processed. And they are missing the fiber and many of the phytochemicals that you find in the intact plant. If you're out with friends and you want to have a vegan burger once in a while, yeah, that's cool.
Aside from it being less harmful for animals, are there any health benefits to lab-grown meat?
I feel like the Incredible Hulk. Now you're making me mad. Because lab-grown meat is a lie. Because we will never be able to do in our lab what nature does in a living organism as efficiently or as cleanly. When people's kidneys fail, we put them on dialysis and try and do for them what their kidneys does, but it takes hours. It's violently expensive. And I mean, we do it because it saves lives, but it is in no way even close to being as efficient or as helpful as a natural kidney, which is why we try to get people kidney transplants. This whole lab-grown meat thing is, number one, is still animal tissue, and animal tissue is unhealthy for us. So that's, just at baseline, it's the wrong thing to do. But the other thing is that there are so many hidden costs involved, because when you're trying to grow tissue in a lab, it's got to be sterile. Because if one bacterium or one virus gets in there, the whole pot is ruined. So what that means is you've got to build these incredible factories that have these special air filters, these special clean rooms to get in and get out. Every time someone goes in to work on a machinery, they've got to gown up from top to bottom in sterile, disposable gowns, which cost thousands of dollars. So right there, the expense is already off the chart. And then you have to also factor in the manufacture of the reagents that are going to be used. Because in order for these cells to grow, they've got to have all the 20 amino acids, but the source of those amino acids have to be sterile themselves. So now you've got a whole back production, creating the things that you're going to feed into these bioreactors. And then what you get ultimately is a slurry of animal tissue cells that you then have to extract out and compact into things that kind of look like meat, but they never will have the texture and structure of actual animal tissue because they're not real muscles. When they take a piece of tissue from a living animal that they then use to grow the animal cells, they can only go through so many replications, and then they have to go back and get another biopsy from that animal. And the point is that, do you think they're going to anesthetize an animal before they take that 50-cent slug of flesh out of its muscles? No. These poor creatures are going to be, chained to some stall where people are carving out pieces of their body to take and grow tissue with. And then ultimately, they'll be sent off to slaughter themselves. So this idea that it's going to decrease harm or is again, just gaslighting and lies.
So it's not vegan. I didn't know that.
Oh, it's not vegan at all. And even for young, vegans who are ethical, again, we need to build our diet around a whole food, plant-based diet and minimize the amount of highly processed foods that we eat, because that's what's going to be best for us as individuals in the long run. It's going to be what's best for us collectively as a species, and it's also what's best for the planet. And one of the most exciting and just mind-blowing areas of research that is now being done is looking at the human microbiome, the bacteria in our colon, and how that interplays and interacts with the various organ systems and our physiology. And what people are uncovering is literally mind-blowing, because it's clear that the microbiome impacts every aspect of our physiology. Heart disease, immune health, disease resistance, cancer resistance. I mean, on down the line, mental functioning. And the more diverse our microbiome and the more plant fiber in all its forms that we provide for it, the richer the phytochemicals and secondary nutrients that it manufactures to give us and promote overall health. It makes us more resistant to depression, anxiety, and all these things. It makes us disease resistant. I'm saying all that to say that it's clear that plants can do much more for us than we even realize right now. And that's why we have to eat the diet our body is designed to eat, not this nonsense that we've come up with. And one of the more fascinating lines of research shows that maternal fiber intake affects fetal brain development. And the more fiber the mother eats, the more developed the child's brain is at birth. So that tells us that plant fiber actually can help make us better humans. Man, I'm telling you, it is fantastic.
Your understanding and explanation of why we're not designed to eat meat goes so deep, down to fiber and the fetus. Like, wow. So I've seen a lot of stories online of you sharing the people that you've helped, and sometimes you can be quite emotional about it because it's such a big thing. So I wanted to ask you, how does it feel that you went vegan at 16, plant-based at 16 for this mission? You then navigated night school, medical school, day school, Stanford, and everything else. Then you started your practice. You've made all these lectures, and then you start to see these results consistently showing up. That must be feel very proud to have done that. What do you think about that?
See, now you're gonna make me like cry on camera, and I'm gonna try not to, but I can't find the words to just to really say what that means. Because even though I think I'm still trying to work out some deal on how not to die. Ultimately, we all come to that end point, but I have been blessed to be able to look back and say people were really helped, and it made life better for people, and that, gosh, that's almost the most that we can ask for from life, is to be a blessing and to have our time on this earth mean something in terms of making it a better place for others.
Well, you've already achieved a massive amount, and you've already created, in my opinion, an epic legacy. But you're like motivation in a jar. So what are you planning next? Like, what's the next steps?
The key thing that I want to do is I really do want to take all of this information and lay it out and the title of the book is going to be Diet by Design.
Right.
And to lay it out so that people can see it and it will make sense to them. And it will make it easier for them to make the change.
Right.
And then, as I said, that will benefit everything and everyone, because it'll make the planet healthier. We won't be abusing as many animals. If we stop using all of this land to grow food to feed the animals, we can leave the environment alone. And then we as humans will be healthy.
Yeah, I totally agree. It just plugs you back into your natural system.
Yes. And if you compare humans to bears, if you took bears out of their environment, the environment would suffer. So studies have shown that when we look at alpine areas, 70% of the nitrogen in those areas actually comes from ocean fish. How does it get there? It gets there from the bears eating the salmon, going and, spreading that nitrogen throughout their environment. And that if you actually remove that from their diet, they wouldn't survive as well. But if you remove them from the environment would suffer. The absolute opposite with humans. So, there is no need for us to consume animals.
There's just so many angles to this, and it just goes deeper and deeper. That's a very, very clear point. This has been such a fun interview, and you're such a knowledge of wealth. How can people find out more about your work, or whether they contact you or reach out to you?
So my website, the title is kind of long, but it sort of makes sense. It's Dr. Milton Mills, plantbasednation.com. And that's just Dr. Milton Mills, plantbasednation.com. No spaces, dots, or anything.
And I would suggest to people that if you want a 101 in plant-based diets, well, it's actually a 101 to a 100 and 200 or whatever, just search Dr. Milton Mills on YouTube, and you'll find plenty of lectures on all types of subjects that go really deep. So, listen, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you so much for everything that you do in this plant-based world. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Absolutely.
Great.